Good morning. This is lecture number 4 for the Consecutive Techniques and Criminal Terminology course. This is our last lecture for this course, and so we're going to go over some administrative issues such as when to take the exam, how to do that, what's going to be in the exam, and so on and so forth. We're going to do that first so that you can come back in the future if you like, to review it. It's going to be at the beginning. So let's see here. So the class is going to end. Let me just go all the way to the end. So let me show you. This class is going to end today in terms of lecturing. So this class does not come with an oral examination. There is no oral exam as you had in the previous one. So there's no one-on-one with me checking on your interpretation or anything like that, because this class is all about developing skill, and there is really no specific correct answer when you develop the skill. You may have your own technique, so there's no point in testing you in any way or manner because I have no way of testing you. However, there is an area that needs to be tested, and that is the vocabulary that is included in your first 4 lectures, and that vocabulary is tested through a written exam. So today is June, let's see, 17th, is it? Let me see, 18th. Okay, so that's our lecture 4, okay, takes place. Today, June 18th, after 3 p.m., you can access the written exam. And you have until June, let's see, 18. When is your next class begins? Just give me 1 second, please, so I can check when your next class begins. I believe it's somewhere in, so your next class begins, the next one is going to be the misdemeanor course on July 9th. So you have until June, is it 30 days or 30th to complete your final exam. Okay. Now on July 6th, you will receive your report card by email. Maybe earlier, actually, but by July 6th. Let's put it by July 6th. Okay, and you're on July 9th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, on July the 9th, the next course begins. At 8 a.m., same time. The name of the course is Interpreting in Superior Courts Misdemeanor. So pretty much on that page, you have all the kind of timeline as to the things that you need to complete, and of course, what's going to be in the written examination, and how do you access the written exam? The same way you access it before, and that is that you will go to your regular site and then click where it says written exam, and once you are there where it says written examination, then you take it, and it's just the same format with the same requirements, not to press the back button, as you did. And if there is an issue, you just go back and start wherever you left off, and then you just basically complete that final examination. It's written only. What's going to be included in the final examination, the written portion? It's going to be included all the material that you see here in this lecture, in this class manual for your course. And it will also include material from the previous course. It is really critical that when you begin your misdemeanor course on July the 9th, you have the necessary knowledge of the legal terminology that is included in this class as well as the previous class. So that's kind of, in a way, the final examination for this course is not very stressful at all because there is no one-on-one. And that's usually what adds stress. And this is the only course where there is no one-on-one examination. So enjoy it while it lasts. And the written exam, you really have a lot of time, like 12 days to complete it. And the reason being that it's possible that you're going to need about 7-8 more days to go over the manual, since we have been spending most of our time on the technique, as it should, because that's what this is all about, really. But we cannot disregard the legal terminology, because if we do disregard the legal terminology, when you come to the next course, you're going to feel a little bit lost until you actually review these terms. So my advice for you is to, of course, take the written exam, and then from the date that you finish your written exam, let's say June 30th until the 9th, continue reviewing all those list of terms that are in the simultaneous as well as the consecutive class manuals. Mainly the terms that have one word and then one or two translations. Those terms such as on page 2 in this manual that gives you the word in English in bold letters and then the translation in regular font. This is, that's my advice, so that when you move on to the next course where we're going to go back to simultaneous, you already have your terminology and you can really take full advantage of that particular course. It's a very difficult course, the next one. I just want to warn you that it's going to be tough. Most people find it to be difficult, and the reason why it's difficult is because we're now going to. It's like if you were going to, from the day one. It's like if you were in court already, and we're going to get all the scripts of all the different proceedings that the interpreter has to interpret in. We're going to get all the different wording used by the judge and so on and so forth. So there is plenty of material that you need to study in a very short period of time. It's a very important class, and most people that take it understand how difficult it is, but they really enjoy it, and they enjoy it a lot because you're basically acting as an interpreter in class. So it's very, very exciting class. You're gonna like it a lot. I'm sure you will. But to really enjoy it in its entirety, the best thing is to have the legal terminology under your belt. And that's why I suggest that you do review the consecutive techniques manual, as well as the simultaneous techniques manual, and review mainly the criminal terminology. Okay, so if you do that, you'll be in good shape. You have plenty of time to get all this done. So it's not that bad actually, but it needs to be done at one point. So that's as far as this class is concerned in terms of the final examination and all those things that have to do with your grade and your report card and the next course and this and that. What we also want to talk about today is what we are going to be doing today in terms of this lecture number 4. And in lecture number 4, what we do is we do a general consecutive. So we'll put it all together what we studied before. All those approaches, whether you take notes, if you do what notes you take, whether you use the technique that we learned here in class, or whether you're going to just write down factual information, or maybe whatever the case, what we discussed last week basically. And we're going to put it all together and we're actually going to do a consecutive, which I will dictate, and all your goal is just to basically render that, the question, the answer, the question, the answer, and we'll do that consecutive today. We are also going to learn a technique a note-taking technique to be used whenever a description of an individual is being given by the witness. Usually descriptions are problematic because the description will be, for example, tiene el pelo color negro, los ojos color café, tiene una cicatriz en el pómulo izquierdo y tiene bigotes. All that is a lot of information, one after the other, that writing it down will become very difficult. So we have a technique for that. And that's kind of the last technique we're going to learn here today. And then we're going to put it all together, okay? And then towards the end, we will do a general review, of course, of Lecture 3 and Lecture 4, the material under Lecture 3 and 4. We're going to learn what a preliminary hearing is and what are these advisement of rights. So we're going to be doing that as well. And then towards the end, we're going to be doing a practice using the simultaneous mode, just kind of to set the tone for the next course. So the last half hour or so is basically doing again your arraignments and another practice that I will select where you will be asked to use the simultaneous technique to interpret. So, and this will wrap up this particular course. I usually, I'm not sure what your opinion is about it, but people really enjoy this course that you're taking right now because of the fact that you're learning just a technique. Usually it's exciting to learn a technique. I can guarantee that the next course, it will be 100 times more enjoyable in many, many ways because you're basically getting yourself ready to work in the courts. See, the way it works is that you take your simultaneous course and your consecutive to get the vocabulary and the techniques. But then you take your misdemeanor course and felony course to be an interpreter. So you are going, for the very first time in the next course, you're going to be noticing changes in your speed, in your skill. Your simultaneous will be better, will be a solid performance, and that really adds a lot of motivation to you in many ways, and it just pushes you to continue studying and studying hard. The state examinations they already started giving these exams, administering these exams. Some students who took the exam indicated to me that the exams have been obviously new exams, and the interesting thing in terms of the techniques that they test you on, they test you simultaneous, which you're going to really master in the next two courses. They test you consecutive, which we have the techniques now, and then we're going to work very hard on the last course on consecutive. And they test you on side translations. And the side translation is the two that you have in the courses that you take, called sight reading from English into Spanish and Spanish into English. And almost all the students told me that for the simultaneous, it was a breeze. For the sight translations, it was a breeze. What we do here is way harder. The consecutive was the technique that they found more difficult because it had a lot of descriptions, a lot of adjectives, and that creates, some kind of complexity in the delivery, and the lengths tend to be quite long, unlike what it used to be in the past, where they had maybe 2-3 terms that were long and the rest were very manageable. So the length are much longer. So knowing now that the exam tends to be more difficult in the consecutive, we will be doing a lot of that in your last course, even more. We're going to increase that technique, so to speak, or we're going to practice a lot more to be ready for that exam. But for simultaneous, most students told me they were over prepared as well as for sight reading. So that's good. We have 3 out of 4 modes, or 3 out of 4 sections of the exam that we're pretty much over prepared, and we need to work a little bit more on the consecutive. And the reason why that happens is because when you have to remember that the consecutive mode is something that you're studying really only for the exam. All this material that you learn right now in this course is just for the exam. In real life, you are allowed and required to always interrupt the witness when the witness speaks for a long period of time. So you're supposed to say, un momento, por favor, then you interpret whatever you can recall from that, or as much as you recall, obviously, or as accurately as you can. And then you say, continue, and then the person. So you basically have control of the length of the segments. In fact, it is required that the interpreter has control of the length of the original segments at all times. And when it comes to the state exam, that control is on their part. They set the segments. You cannot control it. And therefore, you are learning all this and practicing consecutive and learning all these techniques really mainly for the exam. Because in real life, once the person answers one or two sentences, you can stop the person and wait. By interrupting the person, it gives you the time to deliver. And then you can let the person continue, so you really have the control. You don't need to use any fancy technique for that. But in the state exam, remember, they are the ones who control the length of the segment. And therefore, this technique is indeed more towards the exam. You will see when you take your state examination, and then once you start working in the courts, because otherwise you have no point of reference, really, that the exam doesn't really validate what you do in court. And by that I mean that the exam is one thing, working is a different thing. Instead of the exam trying to match what you're going to be doing in court, the exam is completely off in many areas of I would say in the whole, all the components. So it's really odd how these exams are actually developed, but it's kind of unfortunate because you need to prepare specifically for the exam to be able to go and work in the court system, because otherwise if you're not certified you cannot. But then the exam is measuring one thing and working in court is something different. So you could technically pass the exam but be unable to work in court. That's because the exam doesn't measure what you will be doing in the court system. For example, some versions of the exam have not too many legal terms, and you can see that if you're going to work in criminal court, you need to know legal terminology, but you're not tested anywhere when it comes to legal terminology. Some exams are very heavy on legal terms. But the bottom line is that if you don't know your legal terminology, you cannot work in the court system, period. I mean, it's just impossible to work in the court system. When you do take your state examination, you may come up with the impression of, well, he didn't have enough legal terms. I expected a lot more. And that's because of the way the exam is designed. So the design of that examination is not an indication of what you're going to be doing in the courts. As a result of it, when you take a training program, it forces, in this case, it forces me, the instructor, to train you for court and to train you for the exam. And that's precisely what this program is about. See, the first 2 courses train you for both. You can think of it as training you for court, and everything trains you for both, really. But the emphasis is kind of different. In the first 2 courses, the emphasis is, into the techniques mainly, and then the legal terminology for court. The next 2 courses is that necessary. You need to know those 3rd courses. You need to go through that to be able to work in the court system. So that's mainly for court, which helps you in the state examination because it also develops the technique in simultaneous. But when it comes to sight translation, that is those two courses, the last three courses in a sequence here, specifically for the state exam, simply because the state exam designed an exam that it is not an indication of what you will be doing in court. So the training could be shorter, it could be more geared towards what you do in court, but unfortunately you really have to spend 6 months. The first 6 months is on getting you ready to work in the court system. The last 6 months is getting you ready to pass the exam. And unfortunately the last 6 months are there because the exam is not properly prepared. It doesn't measure what you are supposed to know to work in the court system. So it has been like this for a long time. And I'm not, I just wonder why they do this. I really don't know. It's probably maybe lack of knowledge on their part as to what the interpreter does, or lack of knowledge as to how to write an examination, how to prepare an exam for people to take. It's just puzzling. But those are the rules of the game. If you want to be certified, you have to go through those rules of the game, right? And you need to get that done, and that's why, but I think it's clear now that in this program which part of the program emphasizes one and which part emphasizes the other. And the first 4 courses emphasize working in the court system with maybe 35% towards the state exam, 65% to the court system. And the last 3 courses is basically 95% for the state exam, 5% for court. But anyway, so the good news is that most of our students had no issues with the simultaneous and the sight readings, which in the past they used to be really the most difficult portion of the exam. So now they are much more they're becoming much tougher in the consecutive mode. So having said that, let's just work and get a new technique here that will be helpful to take down information that deals with the description of an individual. There are times where the attorney asked the witness the following question: can you please describe him? Could you tell me what he looked like? All that type of questions are kind of problematic because the answer can be: era una persona baja, de unos 145 libras más o menos, unos 23 años, tenía el pelo oscuro o negro, tenía los ojos color café, traía unos bigotes y tenía la nariz puntiaguda, for example. So it's a description. When they give you, and you're doing this in the consecutive mode, when they give you this description in the consecutive mode, you really need to write a lot of words, one below the other. And there is so much, it's all factual, right? So we consider that to be factual information. So you wouldn't use, for example, the technique that we learned here. You wouldn't use that. You would just use factual information. So how do you deal with factual information? Just write it down one word below the other. That's what you will do, right? The problem with that situation is that there is so much information coming to you that it's very possible that some portions of that will be left out. So in order to prevent that from happening, what we do is we learn a technique that it works as follows. This is specifically for descriptions. A circle is what we're going to draw whenever you hear the question, what did he look like? And then what we're going to do is, you don't have to draw anything on this circle, but you should know that this is something that you should keep in mind the circle refers to. So it's this, you don't have to draw anything else, but so for example, if they say he had Tenía el pelo negro. Oops, sorry, this one is not behaving. Give me 1 second until it resets by itself, I believe. Okay, so tenía el pelo negro, los ojos color café, tenía bigotes, bigotes, y tenía, qué sé yo, una nariz puntiaguda. So what we do is we initiate this line from the part that is being referred to. Hair, eyes, this is bigotes, so it's clearly this area here. You can even draw it if you want to. You know, I don't know, it's up to you. And then this one coming from the nose. And then when you deliver this, the order, the sequence is irrelevant. When you talk about description of an individual, it really doesn't matter if you say tenía el pelo negro y los ojos color café, or if you say tenía los ojos color café y el pelo negro. It really makes no difference whatsoever. So this format, it's very important because this is going to eliminate the writing of a lot of words here. For example, you don't need to write pelo, you don't need to write ojos, you don't need to write nariz, you don't need to, well, bigote you do here, but you don't need to write it because this actually describes where that's coming from. And this can be used, you know, inside the technique that we have already developed. So if we have a technique like this, and suddenly this person is going to describe someone, you can just do that, right? You can just take notes like this inside that domain, that column, indicating, you know, what the description of that person is. So you can even incorporate it in segments that call for this long approach, this long technique. So you could have a situation where it says, sí, yo estaba en la casa de José cuando José llegó con un amigo. And then you'll say, el amigo, so you have to open a third line, right? It will be here. El amigo era una persona de unos 24 años, un peso de unos 150 libras. Okay, so you do this, and then tenía el pelo color negro, los ojos color café, tenía bigotes, y traía un automóvil rojo. I don't know. So you'll write it in that particular column. You kind of incorporate this into that particular column. If it just happens that this description is being used as part of a long answer, sometimes this is only used for an answer because sometimes the question is just, what did he look like? So you know it's going to be this. That's it. There's not going to need to use any of this. Or can you please describe him? Well, it's going to be only that. So your notes should only include in those cases, oops, where is it? It's gone. Oh. Your notes should include only in those cases this. When they ask, what did he look like? Can you describe him to the court? Then this is the notes. This is not the whole paper. You know, maybe you can, this is your paper, so you can do it here, right? Because you know that the answer is going to be just that factual answer. But if the person is talking about, you know, you're using this technique because he's actually talking about what happened and this and that. And one of those things that this person is being described, you know, when you know, su amigo era un hombre de 24 años, 150 libras, and then you just basically describe, tenía el pelo color negro, los ojos color café, tenía bigotes, traía un automóvil rojo. All that is described in this column. Well, instead of actually writing it out, you can actually use this symbol and apply it to that. Okay, so that's important. So it's not difficult, it's self-explanatory. You don't have to draw, you know, this. It's unnecessary, okay? So you don't have to draw that. You just basically know these are the eyes, this is going to be the hair, this is kind of the chin area and the mouth, this is going to be the nose, right? This is going to be the cheekbone, right? Cheekbone, that will be the right cheekbone. So it's just right here maybe, so that's a cheekbone. So if you can, remember that, which shouldn't be a big problem, it's just not too complicated in my view to use it. Okay, so let's just try one and see how you will use this. I have to tell you that the triggering question is, what did he look like? So whenever you hear in English, what did he look like, the first thing you do is you draw a circle. Because there might be information that is not related to the face, because it may say, for example, bueno, era una persona que de, qué sé yo, 200 libras, aproximadamente 41 años de edad, and then they can start, tenía el pelo color negro, ojo color café, blah, 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 blah. So we're going to see, so that there is a possibility that next to it, you're going to write something that is not related to the face. So you will write it next to it, on top, below, whatever you want. It doesn't matter because sequence here is completely irrelevant. It doesn't change in any way or manner the content of the original. So let's just do a practice with this and see how you do that. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question, and the question is going to trigger the type of notes that you need to take, which will be this description type of notes. Okay, so you're doing the interpretation, and suddenly one portion of the segment, the question is, what did he look like? Which you interpret como se veía. That's the best option. Or maybe the question is, can you describe it to the court? Se lo puede describir al juez. So when that happens, then you already take the necessary steps to be ready for the answer. Okay, so let's do that. So can you describe him to the court? You can interpret that into Spanish now. Can you describe him to the court? Pues sí, era un hombre de unos 32 años de edad, medía aproximadamente 5 pies, 8 pulgadas, pesaba unos 178 libras más o menos, traía el pelo color negro, los ojos color verde, tenía tenía bigotes también de color negro. Okay, now you render it. Go ahead, please, and let me know how it came out.